Blessed love and peace. This is recitation of Tobadi Kokadao, Torah, Bhagavad Gita, Deganakaya, Dhammapada, Gospels, Quran, and Tao Te Ching. This is portion numero 21, which is Ki Tisa. And in this portion, we have Parsha Ki Tisa, which is from Torah, which is Shmot 30:11 a 34:35. From the Chandogya Upanishads, it is Kanda 3, numero 14. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is the Karma Yoga, numero 3. From the Tao Te Ching, it is chapter 21. From Menke, it is chapter 1 of 28. And from the Digha Nikaya, it is the Mahanidana Sutta, numero 15. From the Dhammapada, it is the Pakinaka Vaga, 21. From the Gospels, it is Mark chapters 13 a 14. And from the Quran, it is Surah Al-Hajj, numero 22. And from the Kitabi Akdas, it is verses 1 through 19. This is the first iteration or first session of 10 in complete reading of the Kitabi Akdas in the next 10 weeks, God willing. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. Dao ka dao, fe chong dao, min ka min, fe chong min. Ja Rastafari. Deus nos te qui es in cielo, santo facito nomen tuum. Vaheguru sanam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech olam. Asher kazanu b'mitotav v'tzivanu l'sok b'rvai Torah. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech olam. Barei pari agafen. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sevamastu sabe jigatahim, sabe sata bavantu sukitata, fagabiyam, aquaba upendo na amanim, fikiri neselami, chinta dan permian, libov men, umajigam, umbuntu shubano fikitkan. Sheshen, como sinina, namo arigato, pelo mayelo wakantoko, toko doko shingun, gomelagan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jam yat yata afnami. Mado, Aho, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. From Torah, Ki Tisa. Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, when you take the sum of the children of Israel according to their numbers, let each one give to Elohim an atonement for his soul when they are counted. Then there will be no plague amongst them when they are counted. This they shall give, everyone who goes through the counting, half a shekel according to the holy shekel. 20 gerahs equal 1 shekel. Half of such a shekel shall be an offering to Elohim. Everyone who goes through the counting from the age of 20 and upwards shall give an offering to Elohim. The rich shall give no further, and the poor shall give no less than half a shekel, with which to give the offering to Elohim to atone for your souls. You shall take the silver of the atonements from the children of Israel and utilize it for the work of the tent of meeting. It shall be a remembrance for the children of Israel before Elohim to atone for your souls. Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, you shall make a washstand of copper and its base of copper for washing, and you shall place it between the tent of meeting and the altar, and you shall put water therein. Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands and feet from it. When they enter the tent of meeting, they shall wash with water, so that they will not die. Or when they approach the altar to serve, to make a fire offering rise up in smoke to Elohim, they shall wash their hands and feet, so that they will not die. This shall be for them a perpetual statute for him and for his descendants for their generations. Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, and you take for yourself spices of the finest sort, of pure myrrh, 500 shekel weights, of fragrant cinnamon, half of it 250 shekel weights, of fragrant cane, 250 shekel weights, and of cassia 500 shekel weights according to the holy shekel, and 1 hin of olive oil. You shall make this into an oil of holy anointment and a perfumed compound according to the art of a perfumer. It shall be an oil of holy anointment. And you shall anoint with it the tent of meeting and the ark of testimony, the table and all its implements, the menorah and its implements, the altar of incense, the altar of the burnt offering and all its implements, the washstand and its base. And you shall sanctify them so that they become a holy of holies. Whatever touches them shall become holy. And with it you shall anoint Aaron and his sons and sanctify them to serve me as Kohanim. And to the children of Israel you shall speak, saying, This shall be oil of holy anointment to me for your generations. It shall not be poured upon human flesh, and according to its formula you shall not make anything like it. It is holy, it shall be holy to you. Any person who compounds anything like it or puts any of it on an alien shall be cut off from his people. And Elohim said to Moshe, Take for yourself aromatics, namely balsam, sap, onca, and galbanum, aromatics and pure frankincense. They shall be of equal weight. And you shall make it into incense, a compound according to the art of a perfumer, well blended, pure, holy. And you shall crush some of it very finely, and you shall set some of it before the testimony in the tent of meeting, where I will arrange meetings with you. It shall be to you a holy of holies. And the incense that you make, you shall not make for yourselves according to its formula. It shall be holy to you for Elohim. Any person who makes anything like it, to its smell, its fragrance, shall be cut off from his people. Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehudah. And I have imbued him with the spirit of Elohim, with wisdom, with insight, with knowledge, and with talent for all manner of craftsmanship, to do master weaving, to work with gold, with silver, and with copper, with the craft of stones for setting, and with the craft of wood, to do every manner of work. And behold, with him I have placed Oholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, and all the wise-hearted, into whose hearts I have instilled wisdom, and they shall make everything I have commanded you. The tent of meeting, and the ark for the testimony, as well as the cover that shall be upon it, all the implements of the tent, the table and its implements, the pure menorah and all its implements, the altar of incense, the altar for the burnt offering and all its implements, the washstand and its base, the meshwork garments, the holy garments for Aaron the Kohen, the garments of his sons, in which to serve as Kohanim, the anointing oil and the incense for the holy, in complete accordance with everything I have commanded you, they shall do. Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, And you speak to the children of Israel, and say, Only keep my Shabbatot, for it is a sign between me and you for your generations, to know that I, Elohim, make you holy. Therefore keep Shabbat, for it is a sacred thing for you. Those who desecrate it shall be put to death. For whoever performs work on it, that soul will be cut off from the midst of its people. 6 days may work be done, but on the seventh day is a Shabbat of complete rest, holy to Elohim. Whoever performs work on Shabbat shall be put to death. Thus shall the children of Israel observe Shabbat, to make Shabbat throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. Between me and the children of Israel it is forever a sign that in 6 days Elohim created the heaven and the earth, and on the seventh day Elohim ceased and rested. When Elohim had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, Elohim gave Moshe the 2 tablets of the testimony, stone tablets written with the finger of Elohim. When the people saw that Moshe was late in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron, and they said to him, Come on, make us deities so that will go before us, because this man Moshe, who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what has become of him. Aaron said to them, Remove the golden earrings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them those earrings to me. And all the people stripped themselves of the golden earrings that were on their ears, and brought them to Aaron. He took them from their hands, fashioned it with an engraving tool, and made it into a molten calf, upon which they said, These are your deities, O Israel, who have brought you up from the land of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of it, and Aaron proclaimed and said, Mañana shall be a festival to Elohim. On the next day they arose early, offered up burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and to drink, and they got up to make merry. And Elohim said to Moshe, Go, descend, for your people that you have brought up from the land of Egypt have acted corruptly. They have quickly turned away from the path that I have commanded them. They have made themselves a molten calf, and they have prostrated themselves before it, slaughtered sacrifices to it, and said, These are your deities, O Israel, who have brought you up from the land of Egypt. And Elohim said to Moshe, I have seen this people, and behold, they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone, and my anger will be kindled against them, so that I will annihilate them, and I will make you into a great nation. Moshe pleaded before Elohim, his God, and said, Why, O Elohim, should your anger be kindled against your people, whom you have brought up from the land of Egypt with great power and with a strong hand? Why should the Egyptians say, Elohim brought them out with evil intent to kill them in the mountains, and to annihilate them from the face of the earth? Entreat from the heat of your anger, and consider the evil intended for your people. Remember Abraham, Yitzhak, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your very self, and to whom you said, I will multiply your seed like the stars of the heavens, and all this land which I said that I would give to your seed. They shall keep it as their possession forever. Elohim then reconsidered the evil Elohim had said Elohim would do to Elohim's people. Now Moshe turned and went down from the mountain, bearing the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, tablets inscribed with both their sides. On one side and on the other side they were inscribed. Now the tablets were Elohim's work, and the inscription was Elohim's inscription engraved on the tablets. When Yehoshua heard the voice of the people in their shouting, he said to Moshe, "There is a voice of battle in the camp." But Moshe said, "It is neither a voice shouting victory nor a voice shouting defeat, a voice of blasphemy I hear." Now it came to pass, when he drew closer to the camp and saw the calf and the dances, that Moshe's anger was kindled, and he flung the tablets from his hands, shattering them at the foot of the mountain. Then he took the calf they had made, burned it in fire, ground it to fine powder, scattered it upon the surface of the water, and gave it to the children of Israel to drink. Moshe said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you, that you have brought such a grave sin upon them?" Aaron replied, "Let not my master's anger grow hot. You know the people, that they are disposed towards evil. They said to me, 'Make us deities who will go before us, because this man Moshe, who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him.' I said to them, 'Who has gold?' So they took the gold off and gave it to me. I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. And Moshe saw the people that they were exposed to, for Aaron had exposed them to be disgraced before their adversaries. So Moshe stood in the gate of the camp and said, 'Whoever is for Elohim, let him come to me.' And all the sons of Levi gathered around him. He said to them, 'Go.' So said Elohim, the God of Israel, 'Let every man place a sword upon his thigh and pass back and forth from one gate to the other in the camp, and let every man kill his brother, every man his friend, every man his kinsman.' The sons of Levi did according to Moshe's word. On that day, some 3,000 men fell from amongst the people. And Moshe said, 'Initiate yourselves today for Elohim, for each man with his son and with his brother, so that Elohim may bestow a blessing upon you this day.' It came to pass on the next day that Moshe said to the people, 'You have committed a grave sin, and now I will go up to Elohim. Perhaps I will obtain atonement for your sin.' And Moshe returned to Elohim and said, 'Please, this people has committed a grave sin. They have made themselves a deity of gold. And now, if you forgive their sin, but if not, erase me now from your book which you have written.' And Elohim said to Moshe, 'Whoever has sinned against me, him will I erase from my book. And now go, lead the people to the place of which I have spoken to you. Behold, my angel will go before you. But on the way I make an accounting of sins upon them. I will bring their sin to account against them.' Then Elohim struck the people with a plague, because they had made the calf that Aaron had made. Elohim spoke to Moshe, 'Go, ascend from here, you and the people you have brought up from the land of Egypt, to the land that I swore to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I will send an angel from before you, and I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey, because it will go up in your midst, since you are a stiff-necked people, lest I destroy you on the way.' When the people heard this bad news, they grieved, and no one put on his finery. And Elohim said to Moshe, 'Say to the children of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people. If I go up into your midst for one moment, I will destroy you. But now leave off your finery, and I will know what to do to you.' So the children of Israel divested themselves of their finery from Mount Horeb. And Moshe took the tent and pitched it for himself outside the camp, distancing it from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. And it would be that anyone seeking Elohim would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. And it would be that when Moshe would go out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each one at the entrance of his tent, and they would gaze after Moshe went until he went into the tent. And it would be that when Moshe entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and Elohim would speak with Moshe. When all the people would see the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise and prostrate themselves, each one at the entrance of his tent. Then Elohim would speak to Moshe face to face, as a man would speak to his companion, and he would return to the camp. But his attendant Yehoshua, the son of Nun, a lad, would not depart from the tent. Moshe said to Elohim, Look, you say to me, Bring this people, but you have not informed me whom you will send with me. And you said, I have known you by name, and you have also found favor in my eyes. And now if I have indeed found favor in your eyes, pray let me know your ways, so that I may know you, so that I may find favor in your eyes, and consider that this nation is your people. So Elohim said, My presence will go, and I will give you rest. And he said to Elohim, If your presence does not go with us, do not take us up from here. For how then will it be known that I have found favor in your eyes, I and your people? Is it not that in that you will go with us? Then I and your people will be distinguished from every other nation on the face of the earth. And Elohim said to Moshe, Even this thing that you have spoken I will do, for you have found favor in my eyes, and I have known you by name. And he said, Show me now your glory. Elohim said, I will let all my benevolence pass before you. I will proclaim the name of Elohim before you, and I will favor when I wish to favor, and I will have compassion when I wish to have compassion. And Elohim said, You will not be able to see my face, for man shall not see me and live. And Elohim said, Behold, there is a place with me, and you shall stand on the rock. And it shall be that when my glory passes by, I will place you into the cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face shall not be seen. And Elohim said to Moshe, Hew for yourself 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will inscribe upon the tablets the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. Be prepared for the Matan, and in the Matan you shall ascend Mount Sinai, and stand before me there on the top of the mountain. No one shall ascend with you, neither shall anyone be seen anywhere on the mountain, neither shall the sheep and the cattle graze facing that mountain. So he, Moshe, hewed 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and Moshe arose early in the Matan and described Mount Sinai, as Elohim had commanded him, and he took 2 stone tablets in his hand. And Elohim descended in the cloud and stood with him there, and Elohim called out in the name of Elohim. And Elohim passed before him and proclaimed, Elohim, Elohim, benevolent God, who is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abundant in loving kindness and truth, preserving loving kindness for thousands, forgiving iniquity and rebellion and sin. Yet Elohim does not completely clear of sin. Elohim visits the iniquity of parents and children's children to the 3rd and 4th generations. And Moshe hastened, bowed his head to the ground, and prostrated himself, and said, If I have now found favor in your eyes, O Elohim, let the Elohim go now in our midst, even if they are stiff-necked people, and you shall forgive our iniquity and our sin, and thus secure us as your possession. And Elohim said, Behold, I will form a covenant in the presence of all your people. I will make distinctions such as have not been created upon all the earth and amongst all the nations, and all the people in whose midst you are shall see the work of Elohim, how all-inspiring it is, that which I will perform with you. Keep carefully what I am commanding you today. Lo, I will drive out from before you the Amorites and the Canaanites, the Hittites and the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites. Beware lest you form a covenant with the inhabitants of the land into which you are coming, lest it become a snare in your midst. But you shall demolish their altars, shatter their monuments, and cut down their sacred trees. For you shall not prostrate yourself before any deity. For you shall not prostrate yourself before another deity, because Elohim, whose name is Jealous One, is a jealous God. Lest you form a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they, the Gentiles, go astray after their deities, and they offer offerings to their deities, and they invite you, and you eat of their offerings, of their slaughtering. And you shall take of the daughters for your sons, then their daughters will go astray after their deities, and lead your sons astray after their deities. You shall not make molten deities for yourself. The festival of unleavened cakes you shall keep. 7 days you shall eat unleavened cakes, which I have commanded you at the appointed meeting time of the month of spring, for in the month of spring you went out of Egypt. All that opens the womb is mine, and all your livestock that bears a male by the emergence of ox or lamb. And a firstborn donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. If you do not redeem it, you shall decapitate it. Every firstborn of your sons you shall redeem, and they shall not appear before me empty-handed. 6 days may you work, and on the 7th day you shall rest. In plowing and in harvest you shall have rest. And you shall make for yourself a festival of weeks, the first of the wheat harvest, and the festival of the ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times during the year shall all your males appear directly before me, the Elohim, the God of Israel. When I drive out nations from before you, and I widen your border, no one will covet your land when you go up to appear before Elohim your God 3 times each year. You shall not slaughter or sprinkle the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, and the offering of the Pesach feast shall not remain overnight until the Matan. The choicest of the first of your soil you shall bring to the house of Elohim your God. You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. Elohim said to Moshe, inscribe these words for yourself according to these words. I have formed a covenant with you and with Israel. He was there with Elohim for 40 days and 40 nights. He ate no bread and drank no water. And Elohim inscribed upon the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. And it came to pass when Moshe descended from Mount Sinai, and the 2 tablets of the testimony were in Moshe's hand, when he descended from the mountain, and Moshe did not know that the skin of his face had become radiant white. Elohim had spoken with him. That Aaron and all his children of Israel saw Elohim, and behold, the skin of his face had become radiant, and they were afraid to come near. But Moshe called to them, and Aaron and all the princes of the community returned to him, and Moshe would speak to them. Afterwards, all the children of Israel would draw near, and he would command them everything that Elohim had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. When Moshe had finished speaking with them, he placed a covering over his face. When Moshe would come before Elohim to speak with Elohim, he would remove the covering until he left. Then he would leave and speak to the children of Israel what he would be commanded. Then the children of Israel would see Moshe's face, that the skin of Moshe's face had become radiant, and then Moshe would replace the covering over his face until he would come again to speak with Elohim. Chandogya Upanishad número 3:14. All this is Brahman. From it the universe comes forth, and in it the universe merges, and in it the universe breathes. Therefore a man should meditate on Brahman with a calm mind. Now verily man consists of will. As he wills in this world, so does he become when he has departed hence. Let him with this knowledge in mind form his will. The being who consists of the mind, whose body is subtle, whose form is light, whose thoughts are true, whose nature is like the Akasha, whose creation is this universe, who cherishes all righteous desires, who contains all pleasant odors, who is endowed with all tastes, who embraces all this, who never speaks, and who is without longing. He is myself within. That being is myself within the heart, smaller than a grain of rice, smaller than a grain of barley, smaller than a mustard seed, smaller than a grain of millet. That being is myself within the heart, greater than the earth, greater than the mid-region, greater than heaven, greater than all these worlds. That being whose creation is this universe, who cherishes all desires, who contains all odors, who is endowed with all tastes, who embraces all this, who never speaks, and who is without longing. That being is myself within the heart, that is Brahman. That being is that Brahman. When I shall have departed hence, I shall certainly reach Brahman, who says one who has this faith and has no doubt will certainly attain to that deity. Thus said Sandilya, yea, thus he said. Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga He, numero 3. Arjuna says, if you hold, O Janardana, that knowledge is superior to action, why then, O Kesava, do you engage me in this terrible action? With these apparently contradictory words, you seem to confuse my understanding. Therefore, tell me definitely that one thing by which I shall reach the highest goal. Sri Krishna says, Even of yore, O sinless one, a twofold devotion was taught by me to the world, devotion to knowledge for the contemplative and devotion to work for the active. Not by merely abstaining from action does a man reach the state of actionlessness, nor by mere renunciation does he arrive at perfection. Verily, no one can remain even for an instant without doing work, for driven by the gunas of Prakriti, even everyone is made to act in spite of himself. He who restrains his organs of action, but continues to dwell in his mind on the objects of the senses, deludes himself and is called a hypocrite. But he who restrains his senses with his mind and directs his organs of action to work with no feeling of attachment, he, O Arjuna, is indeed superior. Do your allotted work. Do your allotted action. For action is superior to inaction, and even the bare maintenance of your body will not be possible if you remain inactive. The world becomes bound by action unless it be done for the sake of offering. Therefore, O son of Kunti, give up attachment and do your work for the sake of Elohim. For the sake of Brahman. The Prajapati and the being created men together with the sacrifice, with the offering, and said, By this shall you multiply. Let this be the cow of plenty, and yield unto you the milk of your desire. With offering shall you nourish the angels, and may the angels nourish you. Thus nourishing one another, you will obtain the highest benevolence. The angels nourished by offering will bestow on you the enjoyments you desire. He is verily a thief who enjoys the things that they give without offering to them anything in return. Benevolent men who eat the remnant of the offering are freed from all sins, but wicked men who cook food only for themselves verily eat sin. From food all creatures are born, from rain food is produced, from sacrifice comes rain, sacrifice is born of action. Know that action arises from the Vedas, and the Vedas from the imperishable. Therefore the all-pervading Vedas ever rest in offering. Thus was the wheel set in motion, and he who does not follow it, but takes delight in the senses and lives in it, O Partha, lives in vain. But verily the man who rejoices in the self and is satisfied with the self and is content in the self alone, he has nothing for which he should work. He has no object to gain by what he does in this world, nor any to lose by what he leaves undone, nor is there anyone amongst all beings on whom he need depend for any object. Therefore always do without attachment the work you have to do, for a man who does his work without attachment attains the supreme. Verily by action alone men like Janaka attain perfection. Further, you should perform work with a view to guiding people along the right path. Whatever a great man does, that others follow. Whatever he sets up as a standard, that the other worlds follow. I have, O Partha, no duty. There is nothing in the three worlds that I have not gained, nor nothing that I have yet to gain. Have I continued to work? Yet I continue to work. For should I not ever engage unworried in action, O Partha, men would in every way follow in my wake. I should cease to work, these worlds would perish. I should cause the mixture of caste and destroy all these creatures. As the ignorant attached to their work, O Brata, so should an enlightened man act, but without attachment, in order that he may set people on the right path. Let no enlightened men unsettle the understanding of the ignorant who are attached to action. Thus he should engage them in action, himself performing it with devotion. All work is performed by the gunas of Prakriti, but he whose mind is deluded by egotism thinks I am the doer. But, O mighty Arjuna, he who knows the truth about the gunas and action and what is distinction from them holds himself unattached, perceiving that it is the gunas that are occupied with the gunas. Those who are deluded by the gunas of Prakriti attach themselves to the actions that those gunas prompt. Nevertheless, let no man who knows the whole part unsettle the minds of the dull-witted who only know a part. Surrendering all action to me with mind intent on the self, freeing yourself from longing selfishness, fight unperturbed by grief. Those who full of faith ever follow this teaching of mine and do not carve at me, they too are released from their works. But those who carp at my teaching and practice it not, know that such senseless men, blind to all wisdom, are doomed to destruction. Even the man of knowledge acts in accordance with his own nature. All beings follow their nature. What can restraint do? The love and hatred that the senses feel for their objects are inevitable, but let no one come under their sway, for they are one's enemies. Better is one's own dharma, though imperfectly performed, than the dharma of another well performed. Better is death in the doing of one's own dharma than the dharma of another is fraught with peril. Arjuna says, but under what compulsion does a man commit sin, O Varshnaya, in spite of himself and driven, as it were, by force? Sri Krishna says, it is desire, it is wrath, which springs from Rajas. Know that this is our enemy here, all devouring, and the cause of all sin. As fire is concealed by smoke, and as mirror by dust, as the unborn babe by the womb, so is knowledge concealed by ignorance. And enveloped is knowledge, O son of Kunti, by the insatiable fire of desire, which is the constant foe of the wise. The senses, the mind, and the understanding are said to be its seat. Through these it veils knowledge and deludes the embodied soul. Therefore, O master of Bharata, control your senses at the outset and slay this foul destroyer slay this foul destroyer of knowledge and realization. The senses are superior, they say. Superior to the senses is the mind. Superior to the mind is the understanding. Superior to the understanding is Brahman. Therefore, know Brahman, who is superior to the understanding, controlling the self by the self, and destroy, O mighty Arjuna, the enemy who comes in the guise of desire and is hard to overcome. Tao Te Ching 21. The appearance of great virtue follows only the Tao. The Tao as a thing seems indistinct, seems unclear. So unclear, so indistinct. Within it there is image, so indistinct, so unclear. Within it there is substance, so deep, so profound. Within it there is essence, its essence is supremely real. Within it there is faith from ancient times to the present. Its name never departs. To observe the source of all things. How do I know the nature of the source? With this. Menke. That's Tao Te Ching, chapter 21. This is Menke, chapter 1 of 28. Menke goes to see King Hui of Long. The king says, Venerable sir, since you have not counted it too distant to come here, a distance of 1,000 li, may I presume that you are provided with counsels to gain for my kingdom? Menke replies, why must your majesty utilize that word, gain? What I am provided with are counsels to benevolence and righteousness, and these are my only topics. If your majesty say, what is to be done to gain for my kingdom, then the great officers will say, what is to be done to gain for our families? And the inferior officers and the common people will say, what is to be done to benefit our persons? Superiors and inferiors will try to snatch this gain the one from the other, and the kingdom will be endangered. In the kingdom of 10,000 chariots, the murderer of his sovereign shall be the chief of a family of 1,000 chariots. In the kingdom of 1,000 chariots, the murderer of his prince shall be the chief of a family of 100 chariots. To have 1,000 in 10,000 and 100 in 1,000 cannot be said not to be a large allotment. But if righteousness be put last and gain be put first, they will not be satisfied without snatching all. There never has been a benevolent man who neglected his parents. There never has been a righteous man who has made his sovereign an after consideration. Let your majesty also say benevolence and righteousness, and let these by your own themes. Why must you utilize that word gain? Menko another day saw King Hui of Long. The king goes and stands with him by a pond, and looking around at the large geese and deer says, do wise and benevolent princes also find pleasure in these things? Menko replies, being wise and benevolent, they have pleasure in these things. If they are not wise and benevolent, though they have these things, they do not find pleasure. It is said in the book of poetry, he measured out and commenced his marvelous tower. He measured it out and planned it. The people addressed themselves to it, and in less than a day completed it. When he measured and began, he said to them, be not so earnest, be the multitudes. But the multitudes came as if they had been his children. The king was in his marvelous park. The does reposed about, the does so sleek and fat, and the white birds came glistening. The king was by his marvelous pond. How full was it of fishes leaping about? When utilized the strength of the people to make his tower and his pond, and yet people rejoiced to do the work, calling the tower the marvelous tower, calling the pond the marvelous pond, and rejoicing that he had his large deer, his fishes and turtles. The ancients caused the people to have pleasure as well as themselves, and therefore they could enjoy it. In the declaration of tongue it is said, O Sun, when wilt thou expire? We will die together with thee. Where the people wished for G's death, but they should die with him. Although he had powers, ponders, birds, and animals, how could he have pleasure alone? King Hui of Long says, small as my virtue is in the government of my kingdom, I do indeed exert my mind to the utmost. If the year be bad on the inside of the river, I remove as many of the people as I can to the east of the river and convey grain to the country in the inside. When the year is bad on the east of the river, I act on the same way. On examining the government of the neighboring kingdoms, I do not find that there is any prince who exerts his mind as I do, and yet the people of the neighboring kingdoms do not decrease, nor do my people increase. How is this? Menko replies, Your Majesty is fond of war. Let me take an illustration from war. The soldiers move forward to draw to the sound of the drums, and after their weapons have been crossed on one side, they throw away their coats of mail, trail their arms behind them, and run. Some run 100 paces and stop. Some run 50 paces and stop. What would you think if those who run 50 paces were to laugh at those who ran 100 paces? The king says they should not do so. Though they did not run 100 paces, yet they also ran away. Since your majesty knows this, replies Menka, you need not hope that your people will become further numerous than those of the neighboring kingdoms. If the seasons are of husbandry do not be interfered with, the grain will be further than can be counted. If close nets are not allowed to enter the pools and ponds, the fish and turtles will be further than can be consumed. If the axes and bills enter the hills and forests only at proper time, the wood will be further than can be utilized. When the grain and fish and turtles are further than can be eaten, and there is no further wood than can be utilized, this enables the people to nourish their living and grieve for their dead without any feeling against any. This condition in which the people nourish their living and bury their dead without any feeling against any is the first step of royal government. Let mulberry trees be planted about the homesteads with their 5 mu, and persons of 50 years may be clothed with silk. In keeping fowls, pigs, dogs, and swine, let not their times of breeding be neglected, and persons of 70 years may each find and persons of 70 years may eat flesh. Let there not be taken away the time that is proper for the cultivation of the agriculture with its 100 mu, and the family of several mouths that is suspended by it shall not suffer from hunger. Let careful attention be paid to education in schools, inculcating in it especially the feeling of fraternity duties, and gray-haired men will not be seen upon the roads carrying burdens on their backs or on their heads. It never has been that the ruler of a state where such results were seen, persons of 70 wearing silk and eating flesh, and the black-haired peoples suffering neither from hunger nor cold did not attain to the royal dignity. Your dogs and swine eat the food of men, and you do not make any restrictive arrangements. There are people dying from famine on the roads, and you do not utilize the stores of your granaries for them. When people die, you say, it is not owing to me, it is owing to the year. And what does this differ from stabbing a man and killing him? And then saying, it was not I, it was the weapon. Let your majesty cease to lay the blame on the year, and instantly from all the nation, the people will come to you. Lung King Kui of Flong says, I wish quietly to receive your instructions. Minko then says, Minko replies, is there any difference between killing a man with a stick and with a sword? The king says, there is no difference. Is there any difference between doing it with a sword and with the style of government? There is no difference, was the reply. Menko then says, in your kitchen there is fat meat, in your stables there are fat horses, but your people have the look of hunger, and on the wilds there are those who have died of famine. This is leading on beasts to devour men. Beasts devour one another, and men hate them for doing so. When a prince, being the parent of his people, administers his government so as to be chargeable with leading on beasts to devour men, where is his parental relation to the people? Zhong Ni says, was he not without posterity who first made wooden images to bury with the dead? So he said, because that made the semblances of men and utilize them for that purpose. What shall be thought of him who causes his people to die of hunger? King Kui of Long says, there was not in the nation a stronger state than Jin, as you, venerable sir, know, but since it descended to me, on the east we have been defeated by Qi, and then my eldest son perished. On the west we have lost several hundred li of territory to Qin, and on the south we have sustained disgrace at the hands of Chu. I have brought shame on my departed predecessors, and wish on their account to wipe it away once for all. What course is to be pursued to accomplish this? Menko replies, with a territory which is only 100 li square, it is possible to attain to the royal dignity. If your majesty will indeed dispense a benevolent government to the people, being sparing in the utilization of punishments and fines, and making the taxes and levies light, so causing that the field shall be plowed deep, and the weeding of them be carefully attended to, and that the strong-bodied during their days of leisure shall cultivate their filial piety, fraternal respectfulness, sincerity and truthfulness, serving thereby at home their fathers and elder brothers, and abroad their elders and superiors. You will then have a people who can be employed with sticks which they have prepared to oppose the strong male and sharp weapons of the troops of Qin and Chu. The rulers of those states rob their people of their time so that they cannot plow and weed their fields in order to support their parents. Their parents suffer from old age. Their parents suffer from cold and hunger. Brothers, wives, and children are separated and scattered abroad. Thousands, those rulers, as it were, drive their people into pitfalls or drown them. Your majesty will go to punish them in such a case. Who will oppose your majesty? In accordance with this is the saying, the benevolent has no enemy. I beg your majesty not to doubt what I say. The Dhammapada, the Maha Nidana Sutta, numero 15. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Exalted One was living amongst the Kurus, where there was a town of the Kurus named Kama Sadama. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Exalted One, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side. Seated, he said to the Exalted One, it is wonderful and marvelous, venerable sir, how this dependent arising is so deep and appears so deep, yet to myself it seems as clear can be. Do not say so, Ananda. Do not say so, Ananda. This dependent arising, Ananda, is deep, and it appears deep. Because of not understanding and not penetrating this Dhamma, Ananda, this generation has become like a tangled skein, like a knotted ball of thread, like matted rushes and reeds, and does not pass beyond samsara with its plane of misery, unfortunate destinations, and lower realms. Ananda, if one is asked, are aging and death due to a specific condition, one should say they are. If one is asked through what condition is there aging and death, one should say with birth as condition there is aging and death. Ananda, if one is asked, is birth due to a specific condition, one should say it is. If one is asked through what condition is there birth, one should say with existence as condition there is birth. Ananda, if one is asked, is existence due to a specific condition or should one should say it is. If one is asked through what condition is there existence, one should say with clinging as condition there is existence. Ananda, if one is asked, is clinging due to a specific condition, one should say it is. If one is asked through what condition is there clinging, one should say with craving as condition there is clinging. Ananda, if one is asked, is craving due to a specific condition, one should say it is. If one is asked through what condition is there craving, one should say with feeling as condition there is craving. Ananda, if one is asked, is feeling due to a specific condition, one should say it is. And if one is asked through what condition is there feeling, one should say with contact as condition there is feeling. Ananda, if one is asked, is contact due to a specific condition, one should say it is. If one is asked through what condition is there feeling, one should say with contact as condition there is feeling. Ananda, if one is asked, is contact due to specific condition, one should say it is. If one is asked through what condition is there contact, one should say with mentality materiality as condition there is contact. Ananda, if one is asked, is mentality materiality due to specific condition, one should say it is. If one is asked through what condition is there mentality materiality, one should say with consciousness as condition there is mentality materiality. Ananda, if one is asked, is consciousness due to a specific condition, one should say it is. If one is asked through what condition is there consciousness, one should say with mentality materiality as condition there is consciousness. Thus, Ananda, with mentality materiality as condition there is consciousness. With consciousness as condition there is mentality materiality. With mentality materiality as condition there is contact. With contact as condition there is feeling. With feeling as condition there is craving. With craving as condition there is clinging. With clinging as condition there is existence. With existence as condition there is birth. And with birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this entire mass of suffering. It was said, with birth and condition there is aging and death. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no birth of any kind anywhere, that is, of angels in the state of angels, of celestials in the state of celestials, of spirits, demons, human beings, quadrupeds, winged creatures, and reptiles, each into their own state. If there were no birth of beings of any sort into any state, then in the complete absence of birth, with the cessation of birth, would aging and death be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, none of this is the cause, or source, origin, and condition for aging and death, namely birth. It was said, Ananda, with existence as condition there is birth. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no existence of any kind anywhere, that is, no sense sphere existence, fine material existence, or immaterial existence, then in the complete absence of existence, with the cessation of existence, would birth be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, none of this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for birth, namely existence. It was said, with clinging as condition there is existence. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no clinging of any kind anywhere, that is, no clinging to sense pleasures, clinging to views, clinging to precepts and observances, or clinging to a doctrine of self, then in the complete absence of clinging, with the cessation of clinging, would existence be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for existence, namely clinging. It was said, with craving as condition there is clinging. How that is so, Nanda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no craving of any kind anywhere, that is, no craving for visible forms, craving for sounds, craving for smells, craving for taste, craving for tangibles, or craving for mental objects, then in the complete absence of craving, with the cessation of craving, would clinging be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for clinging, namely craving. It was said, with feeling as condition there is craving. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no feeling of any kind anywhere, that is, no feeling born of eye contact, feeling born of ear contact, feeling born of nose contact, feeling born of tongue contact, feeling born of body contact, or feeling born of mind contact, then in the complete absence of feeling then in the complete absence of feeling, with the cessation of feeling, would craving be discerned. Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, or source, origin, and condition for craving, namely feeling. Thus, Ananda, in dependence upon feeling, there is craving. In dependence upon craving, there is pursuit. In dependence of pursuit, there is gain. In dependence of gain, there is decision making. In dependence of decision making, there is desire and lust. In dependence upon desire and lust, there is attachment. In dependence upon attachment, there is possessiveness. In dependence upon possessiveness, there is stinginess. In dependence upon stinginess, there is safeguarding. And because of safeguarding, various evil and unwholesome phenomena originate: the taking up of clubs and weapons, conflicts, quarrels, and disputes, insulting speech, slander, and falsehoods. It was said, because of safeguarding, various evil and unwholesome phenomena originate. Because of safeguarding, various evil and wholesome phenomena originate: the taking up of clubs and weapons, conflicts, quarrels, and disputes, insulting speech, slander, and falsehoods. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no safeguarding of any kind anywhere, then in the complete absence of safeguarding, with the cessation of safeguarding, would those various evil, unwholesome phenomena originate. Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for those various evil and wholesome phenomena, namely safeguarding. It was said, in dependence upon stinginess, there is safeguarding. How that is so, Nanda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no stinginess of any kind anywhere, then in the complete absence of stinginess, with the cessation of stinginess, would safeguarding be discerned. Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for safeguarding, namely stinginess. It was said, in dependence upon possessiveness, there is stinginess. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no possessiveness of any kind anywhere, then in the complete absence of possessiveness, with the cessation of possessiveness, would stinginess be discerned. Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for stinginess, namely possessiveness. It was said, in dependence upon attachment, there is possessiveness. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no attachment of any kind anywhere, then in the complete absence of attachment, with the cessation of attachment, would possessiveness be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for possessiveness, namely attachment. It was said, in dependence upon desire and lust, there is attachment. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no desire and lust of any kind anywhere, then in the complete absence of desire and lust, with the cessation of desire and lust, would attachment be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for attachment, namely desire and lust. It was said, in dependence upon decision making, there is desire and lust. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely utterly no decision making of any kind anywhere, then in the complete absence of decision making, with the cessation of decision making, would desire and lust be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for desire and lust, namely decision making. It was said, in dependence upon gain, there is decision making. How that is so, Ananda, it should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no gain of any kind anywhere, then in the complete absence of gain, with the cessation of gain, would decision making be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for decision making, namely gain. It was said, in dependence upon pursuit, there is gain. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no pursuit of any kind anywhere, then in the complete absence of pursuit, with the cessation of pursuit, would gain be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for gain, namely pursuit. It was a way. It was said, in dependence upon craving, there is pursuit. Of how that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely utterly no craving of any kind anywhere, that is, no craving for essential pleasure, craving for existence, or craving for non-existence, then in the complete absence of craving, with the cessation of craving, would pursuit be discerned? Certainly not, venerable sir. Therefore, Nanda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for pursuit, namely craving. Thus, Ananda, these two phenomena being a duality converged into a unity in feeling. It was said, with contact as condition, there is feeling. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If there were absolutely and utterly no contact of any kind anywhere, that is, no eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, or mind contact, then in the complete absence of contact with the cessation of contact, would feeling be discerned? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. Therefore, none of this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for feeling, namely contact. It was said, with mentality materiality as condition, there is contact. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If those qualities, traits, signs, and indicators through which there is a description of the mental body were all absent, would designation, contact be discerned in the material body? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. If those qualities, traits, signs, and indicators through which there is a description of the material body were all absent, would impingement, contact be discerned in the mental body? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. If those qualities, traits, signs, and indicators through which there is a description of the mental body and the material body through which there is a description of the mental body and the material body were all absent, would either designation, contact, or impingement, contact be discerned? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. If those qualities, traits, signs, and indicators through which there is a description of mentality, materiality were all absent, would contact be discerned? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. Therefore, none of this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for contact, namely mentality, materiality. It was said, with consciousness as condition, there is mentality, materiality. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If consciousness were not to descend into the Moor's womb, would mentality, materiality take shape in the womb? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. If after descending into the womb, consciousness were to depart, would mentality, materiality be generated into this present state of being? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. If the consciousness of a young boy or girl were to be cut off, would mentality, materiality grow up, develop, and reach maturity? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. Therefore, Ananda, this is the cause, source, origin, and condition for mentality, materiality, namely consciousness. It was said, with mentality, materiality, there is consciousness. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If consciousness were not to gain a footing in mentality, materiality, would an origination of the mass of suffering, of birth, of future birth, aging, and death be discerned? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. Therefore, none of this is the cause, the source, origin, and condition for consciousness, namely mentality, materiality. It is to this extent, Ananda, that one can be born, age, and die, pass away, and re-arise. To this extent that there is a pathway for designation, to this extent that there is a pathway for language, to this extent that there is a pathway for description, to this extent that there is a sphere for wisdom, to this extent that the rond alms for describing the state of being, that is, when there is mentality, materiality, together with consciousness. In what ways, Ananda, does one describing self describe it? Describing self as having material forms and as limited, one describes it thus: myself has material form and is limited. Or describing self as having material form and as infinite, one describes it thus: myself has material form, finite, and infinite. Or describing self as immaterial and limited, one describes it thus: myself is immaterial and limited. Or describing himself as immaterial and infinite, one describes it thus: myself is immaterial and infinite. Therein, Ananda, one who describes self as having material form and as limited either describes such a self as existing only in this present, or he describes such a self as existing there in the future, or he thinks. That which is not thus, I will convert towards the state of being thus. This being so, it can aptly be said that a settled view of self as having material form and as limited underlies this. One who describes self as having material form and as infinite either describes such a self as existing only in the present, or he describes such a self as existing there in the future, or he thinks that which is not thus, I will convert towards the state of being thus. This being so, it can aptly be said that a settled view of self as having material form and as infinite underlies this. One who describes self as immaterial and limited either describes such a self as existing only in the present, or he describes such a self as existing there in the future, or he thinks that which is not that which is not thus, I will convert towards the state of being thus. This being so, it can aptly be said that a settled view of self as immaterial and limited underlies this. One who describes self as immaterial and infinite either describes such a self as existing only in the present, or he describes such a self as existing there in the future, or he thinks that which is not thus, I will convert towards the state of being thus. This being so, it can aptly be said that a settled view of self as immaterial and infinite underlies this. It is in these ways, Ananda, that one describing self describes it. In what ways, Ananda, does one not describing self not describe it? Not describing self as having material form and as limited, one does not describe it thus. Myself has material form and is limited. Not describing self as having material form and as infinite, one does not describe it thus. Myself has material form and is infinite. Or not describing self as immaterial and limited, one does not describe it thus. Myself is immaterial and limited. Or not describing self as immaterial and infinite, one does not describe it thus. Myself is immaterial and infinite. There in another, one who does not describe self as having material form and as limited does not describe such a self as existing only in the present, nor does he describe such a self as existing there in the future, nor does he think that which is not thus, I will convert towards the state of being thus. This being so, it can aptly be said that a settled view of self as having material form and as limited does not underlie this. One who does not describe self as having material form and as infinite does not describe such a self as existing only in the present, nor does he describe such a self as existing there in the future, nor does he think that which is not ours, I will convert towards the state of being thus. This being so, it can aptly be said that a settled view of self as having material form and as infinite does not underlie this. One who does not describe self as immaterial and limitless and limited does not describe such a self as existing only in the present, nor does he describe such a self as existing there in the future, nor does he think that which is not thus, I will convert toward the state of being thus. This being so, it can aptly be said that a settled view of self as immaterial and limited does not underlie this. One who describes self as immaterial and infinite does not describe such a self as existing only in the present, nor does he describe such a self existing there in the future, nor does he think that which is not thus, I will convert towards the state of being thus. This being so, it can aptly be said that a settled view of self as immaterial and infinite does not underlie this. It is in these ways, Ananda, that one who not describing self does not describe it. In what ways, Ananda, does one considering the idea of self consider it? One considering the idea of self either considers feeling as self, saying feeling is myself, or he considers feeling as not myself is without experience of feeling, or he considers feeling is not myself, but myself is not without experience of feeling. Myself feels, for myself is subject to feeling. Therein another, the one who says feeling is myself should be asked, friend, there are these three kinds of feeling: pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Of these three kinds of feeling, which do you consider as self? Ananda, on the occasion when one experiences a pleasant feeling, one does not on that same occasion experience a painful feeling. No, or a neither painful nor pleasant feeling on that occasion. One experiences only a pleasant feeling. On the occasion when one experiences a painful feeling, one does not on that same occasion experience a pleasant feeling or a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. On that occasion, one experiences only a painful feeling. On the occasion when one experiences a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, one does not on that same account experience a pleasant feeling or a painful feeling. On that occasion, one experiences only a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Ananda, pleasant feeling is a permanent condition dependently arisen, subject to destruction, falling away, fading out, and ceasing. Painful feeling is impermanent condition dependently arisen, subject to destruction, falling away, and fading out, and ceasing. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling is a permanent condition dependently arising, subject to destruction, falling away, fading out, and ceasing. If when experiencing a pleasant feeling, one thinks this is myself, then with the ceasing of that pleasant feeling, one thinks myself has disappeared. If when experiencing a painful feeling, one thinks this is myself, then with the ceasing of that painful feeling, one thinks myself has disappeared. If when experiencing a neither painful nor pleasant feeling one thinks this is myself, then with the ceasing of that neither painful nor pleasant feeling one thinks myself has disappeared. Thus one who says feeling is myself considers as self something which even here and now is impermanent, a mixture of pleasure and pain, and subject to arising and falling away. Therefore, Nanda, because of this, it is not acceptable to consider feeling as feeling. Ananda, the one who says feeling is not myself is without experience of feeling, he should be asked, friend, where there is nothing at all felt, who could the idea I am occur there? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. Therefore, Nanda, because of this, it is not acceptable to consider my feeling is not self. Myself is without experience of feeling. Ananda, the one who says feeling is not myself, but myself is not without existence of feeling. Myself feels, for myself is subject to feeling. He should be asked, friend, if feeling were to cease absolutely and utterly without remainder, then in the complete destruction of feeling with the cessation of feeling, could the idea I am that occur there? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. Therefore, Nanda, because of this, it is not acceptable to consider. Feeling is not myself, but myself is not without experience of feeling. Myself feels, for myself is subject to feeling. Ananda, when a bhikshu does not consider feeling as self and does not consider as self as without experience of feeling and does not consider myself feels, for myself is subject to feeling, then being without such consideration, he does not cling to anything in the world. Not clinging, he is not agitated. Not being agitated, he personally obtains nibbana. He understands, destroyed his birth, the holy life has been filled, what had to be done has been done, thus there is no returning to the state of being. Ananda, if anyone should say of a bhikshu whose mind has been thus liberated that he holds the view a Tathagata exists after death, that would not be proper, or that he holds the view a Tathagata does not exist after death, that would not be proper, or that he holds the view a Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death, that would not be proper, or that he holds the view a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death, that would not be proper. For what reason? Because that bhikshu is liberated by directly knowing this and the extent of designation and the extent of the pathway for designation, the extent of language and the extent of the pathway for language, the extent of description and the extent of the pathway for description, the extent of wisdom and the extent of the sphere of wisdom, extent of the sound and the extent to which the round turns. To say of a bhikshu who is liberated by directly knowing this, that he holds the view, one does Ananda, if anyone should say of a bhikshu whose mind has been thus liberated that he holds the view a Tathagata exists after death, that would not be proper, or that he holds the view a Tathagata does not exist after death, that would not be proper, or that he holds the view a Tathagata will both exist and does not exist after death, that would not be proper, or that he holds the view a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death, that would not be proper. For what reason? Because that bhikshu was liberated by not directly knowing this, the extent of designation and the extent of the pathway for designation, the extent of language and the extent of the pathway for language, the extent of description and the extent of the pathway for description, the extent of wisdom and the extent of the sphere for wisdom, the extent of the round and the extent to which the round turns. To say of a bhikshu who is liberated by directly knowing this, that he holds the view one does not know and does not see, that would not be proper. Ananda, there are these 7 stations for consciousness and 2 bases. What are the 7? There are Ananda beings who are diverse in body and diverse in perception, such as beings, some angels and some beings in the lower realms. This is the first station for consciousness. There are beings who are diverse in body but identical in perception, such as angels of the Brahma order who are generated through the first jhana. This is the second station for consciousness. There are beings who are identical in body but diverse in perception, such as the angels of streaming radiance. This is the third station for consciousness. There are beings who are identical in body and identical in perception, such as the angels of refulgent beauty. This is the fourth station for consciousness. There are beings who, through the complete surmounting of perceptions of material form, the passing away of perceptions of impingement, and attention to persecutions of diversity, contemplating space is infinite, arrive at the base of the infinity of space. This is the fifth station for consciousness. There are beings who, having completely surmounted the base of the infinity of space, contemplating consciousness is infinite, arrive at the base of the infinity of consciousness. This is the sixth station for consciousness. There are beings who, having completely surmounted the base of the infinity of consciousness, contemplating there is nothing, arrive at the base of nothingness. This is the seventh station for consciousness. The base of non-percipient beings, and second, the base of neither perception nor non-perception. These are the two bases. Therein and Ananda, if one understands the first station for consciousness, that of beings who are diverse in body and diverse in perception, and if one understands its origin, its passing away, its satisfaction, its unsatisfactoriness, and the escape from it, is it proper for one to seek enjoyment in it? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. If one understands the remaining stations for consciousness, the base of non-percipient beings, the base of neither perception or non-perception, and if one understands its origin, its passing away, its satisfaction, its unsatisfactoriness, and the escape from it, is it proper for one to seek enjoyment in it? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. Ananda, when the bhikshu, having understood as they truly are the origin and passing away, satisfaction and unsatisfactoriness, and escape in regard to these seven stations for consciousness and two bases, is liberated through non-clinging, then he is called a bhikshu liberated by wisdom. Ananda, there are these 8 emancipations. What are the 8? One possessing material forms sees material forms. This is the first emancipation. One not perceiving material forms internally sees material forms externally. This is the second emancipation. One is released from the idea of the beautiful. This is the third emancipation. Through the complete surmounting of perceptions of material form, the passing away of perceptions of impingement, and non-attention to perceptions of diversity, contemplating space is infinite, one enters and dwells in the base of the infinity of space. This is the fourth emancipation. Having completely surmounted the base of the infinity of space, contemplating consciousness is infinite, one enters and dwells in the mind of the infinity of consciousness. This is the fifth emancipation. Having completely surmounted the base of the infinity of consciousness, contemplating there is nothing, one enters and dwells in the base of nothingness. This is the sixth emancipation. Having completely surmounted the base of nothingness, one enters and dwells in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This is the seventh emancipation. Having completely surmounted the base of neither perception nor non-perception, one enters and dwells in the cessation of perception and feeling. This is the eighth emancipation. Ananda, when a bhikshu attains these 8 emancipations in forward order, in reverse order, and in both forward order and reverse order, when he attains them and emerges from them whenever he wants, in whatever way he wants, and for as long as he wants, and when through the destruction of the kinkars he here and now enters and dwells in the kinkarless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, having realized it for himself with direct knowledge, then he is called a bhikshu who is liberated in both ways. And Ananda, there is no other liberation in both ways higher or further sublime than this one. Thus spoke the Exalted One. The Venerable Ananda, being pleased, rejoiced in the Exalted One's words. Dhammapada Pakinaka Vaga 21. If by renouncing a lesser happiness one may realize a greater happiness, let the wise man renounce the lesser, having regard for the greater. Entangled by the bonds of hate, he who seeks his own happiness by inflicting pain on others is never delivered from hatred. The cankers only increase for those who are arrogant and heedless, who leave undone what should be done and do what should not be done. The cankers cease for those mindful and clearly comprehending ones who always earnestly practice mindfulness of the body, who do not resort to what should not be done and steadfastly pursue what should be done. Having slain more craving and far self-conceit, who two warrior kings, eternalism, and nihilism, and destroyed a country, sense organs, and sense objects, together with its treasurer, attachment, and lust. Ungrieving goes the holy man, having slain far more, craving far, self-conceit, two Brahmin kings, two extreme views, and a tiger as the fifth, the five mental hindrances. Ungrieving goes the holy man. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaking happily, who day and night constantly practice the recollection of the qualities of the Buddha. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who day and night constantly practice the recollection of the qualities of the Dhamma. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who day and night constantly practice the recollection of the qualities of the Sangha. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who day and night constantly practice mindfulness of the body. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, whose minds by day and night delight in the practice of non-violence. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, whose minds by day and night delight in the practice of meditation. Difficult is life as a monk, difficult is it to delight therein. Also difficult and sorrowful is the household life. Suffering comes from association with unequals. Suffering comes from wandering in samsara. Therefore be not an aimless wanderer, be not a pursuer of suffering. He who is full of faith and virtue and possesses benevolent repute and wealth, he is respected everywhere in whatever land he travels. The benevolent shine from a distance like the Himalayan mountains, but the wicked are unseen like arrows shot in the night. He who sits alone, sleeps alone, and walks alone, who is strenuous and subdues himself alone, will find delight in the solitude of the forest. Mark 13:14. As Jesus was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings. Do you see all these great buildings?" Replied Jesus, "Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us when will these things happen, and what will be the sign that they are about to be fulfilled?" Jesus said to them, "Watch out that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, claiming I am he, and will deceive many. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places, and famines. These are the beginning of birth pains. You must be on your guard. You will be handed over to the local councils and flogged in the synagogues. On account of me, you will stand before governors and kings as witnesses to them. And the gospel must first be preached to all nations. Whenever you are arrested and brought to trial, do not worry beforehand about what to say. Just say whatever is given you at that time, for it is not you speaking, but the Holy Spirit. Brother will betray brother to death, and afar his children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. Everyone will hate you because of me, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. When you see the abomination that causes desolation standing where it does not belong, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go down or enter the house to take anything out. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing Moors. Pray that this will not take place in winter, because those will be the days of distress unequaled from the beginning when God created the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If God had not cut short those days, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect whom God has chosen, God has shortened them. At that time, if anyone says to you, "Look, here is the Messiah," or "Look, there he is," do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. So be on your guard. I have told you everything ahead of time. But in those days following that distress, the soleil will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, people will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory, and he will send his angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of the heavens. Now learn the lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see these things happening, you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. But about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Creator. Be on guard, be alert. You do not know when that time will come. It's like a man going away. He leaves his house and puts his servants in charge, each with assigned task, and lets the one at the door to keep watch, and tells the one at the door to keep watch. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know when the owner of the house will come back, whether in the evening or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or at dawn. If he comes suddenly, do not let him find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to everyone, watch. Now Pesach and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. Whilst he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for further than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them any time you want, but you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, that what she has done will also be held in memory of her." Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money, so he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, when it was customary to sacrifice the Pesach lamb, Jesus' disciples asked him, "Where do you want us to go and make preparations for you?" So he sent 2 of his disciples, telling them, "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him. Say to the owner of the house, he enters. The teacher asks, 'Where is my guest room, where I may eat the Pesach with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs, furnished and ready. Make preparations for us there." The disciples left, went into the city, and found things just as Jesus had told them. So they prepared the Pesach. When evening came, Jesus arrived with the 12. Whilst they were reclining at the table eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." They were saddened, and one by one they said to him, "Surely you don't mean me." "It was one of the 12," he replied, "one who dips bread into the bowl with me. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him, but woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born." Whilst they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, Take it, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank from it. "This is my body of the covenant, which is poured out for many," he said to them. "Truly I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the sovereignty of God." When they had sung a hymn, they went out of the Mount of Olives. "You will all fall away," Jesus told them, "for it is written, 'I will strike the shepherd, and the shepherd will be scattered.' But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter declared, "Even if all fall away, I will not." "Truly I tell you," Jesus answered, "today, yes, tonight, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will disown me 3 times. But Peter insisted emphatically, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the others said the same. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here whilst I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Going a little further, he fell to the ground and prayed that, if possible, the hour might pass from him. "Abba, Creator," he said, "everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Simon," he said to Peter, "are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once further he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. They did not know what to say to him. Returning the third time, he said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough, the hour has come. Look, the Son of Man has been delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." Just as he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, appeared with him, and with him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs sent from the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. The men seized Jesus and arrested him. Then one of those standing near drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Am I leading a rebellion," said Jesus, "that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I was with you, teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me. But the scriptures must be fulfilled." Then everyone deserted him and fled. A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests and elders and the teachers of the law came together. Peter followed him at a distance right into the courtyard of the high priest. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death, but they did not find any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him. "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands.' Yet even then their testimony did not agree." Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am he," said Jesus, "and you will know that the Son of Man is sitting at the right hand and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." The high priest tore his clothes. "Why do we need any further witnesses?" he asked. "You have heard the blasphemy. Well, what do you think?" They all condemned him as worthy of death. Then some began to spit at him, and they blindfolded him, struck him with their fists, and said prophecy, and the guards took him and beat him. Whilst Peter was following in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she looked closely at him. "You also were with that Nazarene Jesus," she said. But he denied it. "I don't know or understand what you're talking about," he said, and went out into the entryway. When the servant girl saw him there, she said again to those standing around, "This fellow is one of them." Again he denied it. After a little while, those standing near said to Peter, "Surely you are one of them, for you are a Galilean." He began to call down curses, and he swore to them, "I don't know this man you're talking about." Immediately the rooster crowed the second time. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken to him, "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." And he broke down and wept. Surah Al-Hajj, Quran, número 22. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. O mankind, fear your Lord, for the convulsion of the hour of judgment will be a thing terrible. The day ye shall see it, every more giving suck shall forget her suckling babe, and every pregnant female shall drop her load, unformed. Thou shalt see mankind as in a drunken riot, yet not drunk, but dreadful will be the wrath of Allah. And yet amongst men there are such as dispute about Allah without knowledge, and follow every evil one obstinate in rebellion. About the evil one it is decreed that whoever turns to him for friendship, him will he lead astray, and he will guide him to the penalty of the fire. O mankind, if ye have a doubt about the resurrection, consider that we created you out of dust, then out of sperm, then out of a leech-like clot, then out of a portion of flesh, partly formed and partly unformed, in order that we may manifest our power to you. and we cause whom we will to rest in the wombs for an appointed term. Then do we bring you out as babes, then foster you that ye may reach your age of full strength. And some of you are called to die, and some are sent back to the feeblest old age, so that they know nothing after having known much. And further, thou seest the earth barren and lifeless, but when we pour down rain on it, it is stirred to life. It swells, and it puts forth every kind of beautiful growth in pairs. This is so because Allah is the reality. It is Allah who gives life to the dead, and it is Allah who has power over all things. And verily the hour will come, there will be no doubt about it, or about the fact that Allah will raise up all who are in the graves. Yet there is amongst men such a one as disputes about Allah, without knowledge, without guidance, and without a book of enlightenment, disdainfully bending his side in order to lead men astray from the path of Allah. For him there is disgrace in this life, and on the day of judgment we shall make him taste the penalty of burning fire. It will be said, this is because of the deeds which thy hands sent forth, for verily Allah is not unjust to Allah's servants. There are amongst men some who serve Allah as it were on the verge. If benevolence befalls them, they are therewith well content. But if a trial comes to them, they turn on their faces. They lose both this world and the hereafter. That is loss for all to see. They call on such deities besides Allah as can neither hurt nor benefit them. That is straying distantly indeed from the way. Perhaps they call on one whose hurt is nearer than his gain. Evil indeed is the patron, and evil the companion or help. Verily Allah will admit those who believe and work righteous deeds to gardens beneath which rivers flow, for Allah carries out all that Allah plans. If any think that Allah will not help him, Allah's messenger, in this world and the hereafter, let him stretch out a rope to the ceiling and cut himself off. Then let him see whether his plan will remove that which enrages him. Thus have we sent down clear signs, and verily Allah doth guide whom Allah will. Those who believe in the Quran, those who have the Jewish scriptures, those who follow the Jewish scriptures, and the Sabians, Christians, Magians, and polytheists, Allah will judge between them on the day of judgment, for Allah is witness of all things. Seest thou not that to Allah bow down and worship all things that are in the heavens and on earth, the soleil, the moon, the stars, the hills, the trees, the animals, and a great number amongst mankind? But a great number are also such as are fit for punishment, and such as Allah shall disgrace. None can raise to honor, for Allah carries out all that Allah wills. These two antagonists dispute with each other about their Lord, but those who deny their Lord, for them will be cut out a garment of fire, for their heads will be poured out. Over their heads will be poured out boiling water. With it will be scalded what is within their bodies as well as their skins. In addition, there will be maces of iron to punish them. Every time they wish to get away therefrom from anguish, they will be forced back therein, and it will be said, taste ye the penalty of burning. Allah will admit those who believe and work righteous deeds to gardens beneath which rivers flow. They shall be adorned therein with bracelets of gold and pearls, and their garments there will be of silk. For they have been guided in this life to the purest of speeches. They have been guided to the path of Allah, who is worthy of all praise. As those who have rejected Allah and would keep back men from the way of Allah and from the sacred masjid, which we have made open to all men, equal is the dweller there and the visitor from the country, and any whose purpose therein is profanity or wrongdoing, them will we cause to taste of a most grievous penalty. Behold, we gave the sight to Abraham of the sacred house, saying, associate not anything in worship with me, and sanctify my house for those who compass it round, or stand up, or bow, or prostrate themselves therein in prayer. And proclaim the pilgrimage amongst men. They will come to thee on foot and mounted on every kind of camel, lean on account of journeys through deep and distant mountain highways, that they may witness the benefits provided for them and celebrate the name of Allah most through the days appointed over the cattle which Allah has provided for them for sacrifice. Then eat ye thereof. Then let them complete the rites prescribed for them, perform their vows, and again circumambulate the ancient house. Such is the pilgrimage. Whoever honors the sacred rites of Allah, for him it is benevolent in the sight of his Lord. Lawful to you for food in pilgrimage are cattle, except those mentioned to you, as exception, but shun the abomination of idols and shun the word that is false. Being true in faith to Allah and never assigning partners to Allah. If anyone assigns partners to Allah, is as if he had fallen from heaven and been snatched up by birds, or the wind had swooped like a bird on its prey and thrown him into a distant place. Such is his state, and whoever holds in honor the symbols of Allah in the sacrifice of animals, such honor should come surely from piety of heart. In them ye have benefits for a term appointed. In the end, their place of sacrifice is near the ancient house. To every people did we appoint rites of sacrifice, that they might celebrate the name of Allah over the sustenance Allah gave them from animals fit for food. But your Allah is one Allah. Submit then your wills to Allah in Islam, and give thou the benevolent news to those who humble themselves. To those whose hearts, when Allah is mentioned, are filled with fear, who show patient perseverance over their afflictions, keep up regular prayer, and spend in charity out of what we have bestowed upon them. The sacrificial camels we have made for you as amongst the symbols of Allah. In them is much benevolence for you. Then pronounce the name of Allah over them as they line up for sacrifice. When they are down to their sides after slaughter, eat ye thereof, and feed such as beg not, but live in contentment, and such as beg with due humility. Thus have we made animals subject to you, that we may be grateful. It is not their meat nor their blood that reaches Allah, it is your piety that reaches Allah. Allah has thus made them subject to you, that ye may glorify Allah for Allah's guidance to you, and proclaim the benevolent news to all who do right. Verily Allah will defend from ill those who believe. Verily Allah loveth not any that is a traitor to faith, or show ingratitude. To those against whom war is made, permission is given to fight because they are wronged, and verily Allah is most powerful for their aid. They are those who have been expelled from their homes in defiance of right, for no cause except that they say, Our Lord is Allah. Did not Allah check one set of people by means of another? There would surely have been pulled down monasteries, churches, synagogues, and masjids in which the name of Allah is commemorated in abundant measure. Allah will certainly aid those who aid Allah's cause, for verily Allah is full of strength, exalted in might, able to enforce Allah's will. They are those who, if we establish them in the land, establish regular prayer and give regular charity, enjoin the right and forbid wrong. With Allah rests the end and decision of all affairs. If they treat thy mission as false, so did the people before them with their prophets, the people of Noah and Ad and Tamud, those of Abraham and Lot, and the companions of the Madian people. And Moshe was rejected in the same way, but I granted respite to the unbelievers, and only after that did I punish them. But how terrible was my rejection of them. How many populations have we destroyed which were given to wrongdoing? They tumbled down on their roofs. And how many wells are lying idle and neglected, and castles lofty and well built? Do they not travel through the land, so that their hearts and minds may thus learn the wisdom, and their ears may thus learn to hear? Truly it is not their eyes that are blind, but their hearts which are in their breasts. Yet they ask thee to hasten on the punishment, but Allah will not fail in Allah's punishment. Verily a day in the sight of thy Lord is like 1,000 years of your reckoning. And to how many populations do I give respite, which were given to wrongdoing? In the end I punish them. To me is the destination of all. Say, O men, I am sent to you only to give a clear warning. Those who believe and work righteousness, for them is forgiveness and a sustenance most generous. For those who strive against our signs to frustrate them, they will be companions of the fire. Never did we send an apostle or a prophet before thee, but when he framed a desire, sent Satan threw some vanity into his desire. But Allah will cancel anything vain that Satan throws in, and Allah will confirm and establish Allah's signs, for Allah is full of knowledge and wisdom. That Allah may make the suggestions thrown in by Satan but a trial for those in whose hearts is a disease and who are hardened of heart. Verily the wrongdoers are in a schism distantly from the truth. And that those on whom knowledge has been bestowed may learn that the Quran is the truth from thy Lord, and that they may believe therein, and their hearts may be made humbly open to it, for verily Allah is the guide of those who believe to the straight way. Those who reject faith and will not cease to be in doubt concerning revelation until the hour of judgment comes suddenly upon them, or there comes to them the penalty of a day of disaster. On that day of dominion will be that of Allah. Allah will judge between them. So those who believe and work righteous deeds will be in gardens of delight. And for those who reject faith and deny our signs, there will be a humiliating punishment. Those who leave their homes in the cause of Allah and are then slain or die, on them will be on Allah bestow verily a benevolent provision. Truly Allah is Allah who bestows the best provision. Verily Allah will admit them to a place with which they shall be well pleased, for Allah is all knowing, most forbearing. That is so, and if one has retaliated to no greater than extent than the injury he received, and is again set upon inordinately, Allah will help him, for Allah is one that blots out sins and forgives again and again. That is because Allah merges night into day, and Allah merges day into night, and verily it is Allah who hears and sees all things. That is because Allah is the reality, and those besides Allah whom they invoke, they are but vain falsehood. Allah is Allah, most high, most great. Seest thou not that Allah sends down rain from the sky, and forthwith the earth becomes clothed with green, and Allah is Allah who understands the finest mysteries and is well acquainted with them. To Allah belongs all that is in the heavens and on earth, for verily Allah is free of all wants, worthy of all praise. Seest thou not that Allah has made subject to you men all that is on and all that is on the earth, and the ships that sail through the sea by Allah's command. Allah withholds the sky rain from falling on the earth except by Allah's leave, for Allah is most kind and most merciful to man. It is Allah who gave you life, will cause you to die, and will again give you life. Truly man is a most ungrateful creature. To every people we have appointed rites and ceremonies which they must follow. Let them not then dispute with thee on the matter, but do thou invite them to thy Lord, for thou art assuredly on the right way. If they do wrangle with thee, say, Allah knows best what it is ye are doing. Allah will judge between you on the day of judgment concerning the matters in which ye differ. Knowest thou not that Allah knows all that is in heaven and on earth? Knowest it is all in a record, and that is easy for Allah. Yet they worship besides Allah things for which no authority has been sent down to them, and of that which they have truly no knowledge. For those that do wrong, there is no helper. When our clear signs are rehearsed to them, thou wilt notify a denial. Thou wilt notice a denial on the faces of the unbelievers. They nearly attack with violence those who rehearse our signs to them. Say, shall I tell you of something further worse than these signs? It is the fire of hell. Allah has promised it to the unbelievers, and evil is that destination. O men, here is a parable set forth. Listen to it. Those on whom besides Allah ye call cannot create even a fly, even if they all met together for the purpose. And if the fly should snatch away anything from them, they would have no power to release it from the fly. Feeble are those who petition and those whom they petition. No just estimate have they made of Allah, for Allah is Allah who is strong and able to carry out Allah's will. Allah chooses messengers from Allah's and from the men. Allah chooses messengers from angels and from men, for Allah is Allah who hears and sees all things. Allah knows what is before them and what is behind them, and to Allah go back all questions for decision. O ye who believe, bow down, prostrate yourselves, and adore your Lord, and do benevolence, that ye may prosper. And strive in Allah's cause as ye ought to strive, with sincerity and under discipline. Allah has chosen you and has imposed no difficulties on you in religion. It is the call of your Far Aram. It is Allah who has named you Muslims, both before and in this revelation, that the messenger may be a witness for you, and ye be witnesses for mankind. So establish regular prayer, give regular charity, and hold fast to Allah. Allah is your protector, the best to protect and the best to help. Kitab Yakdas, verses 1 a 19. In the name of God, who is the supreme ruler over all that hath been and all that is to be. The first duty prescribed by God for God's servants is the recognition of Him who is the dayspring of God's revelation and the fountain of God's laws, who represent the Godhead in both the sovereignty of God's cause and the word of creation. Whoso achieveth this duty hath attained unto all benevolence, and whoso is deprived thereof hath gone astray, though he be the author of every righteous deed. It behoveth everyone who reacheth this most sublime station, the summit of transcendent glory, to observe every ordinance of God, who is the desire of the world. These twin duties are inseparable, neither is acceptable without the other. Thus hath it been decreed by God, who is the source of divine inspiration. They whom God hath endued with insight will readily recognize that the precepts laid down by God constitute the highest means for the maintenance of order in the world and the security of its people. He that turneth away from them is accounted amongst the abject and foolish. We verily have commanded you to refuse the dictates of your evil passions and corrupt desires, and not to transgress the bounds which the pen of the Most High hath fixed. For these are the breath of life unto all created things. The seas of divine wisdom and divine utterance have risen under the breath of the breeze of the All-Merciful. Hasten to drink your fill, O men of understanding. They that have violated the covenant of God by breaking God's commandments and have turned back on their heels, they have erred grievously in the sight of God, the all-possessing, the Most High. Ye peoples of the world, know assuredly that my commandments are the lamps of my loving providence amongst my servants, and the keys of my mercy for my creatures. Thus hath it been sent down from the heaven of the will of your Lord, the Lord of revelation. Were any man to taste the sweetness of the words which the lips of the All-Merciful have willed to utter, he would, though the treasures of the earth be in his possession, renounce them one and all, and that he might vindicate the truth of even one of God's commands, shining above the dayspring of God's bountiful care and loving kindness. From my laws, the sweet-smelling savor of my garment can be smelled, and by their aid the standards of victory will be planted upon the highest peaks. The tongue of my power hath from the heaven of my omnipotent glory, I address to my creation these words: observe my commandments for the love of my beauty. Happy is the lover that hath inhaled the divine fragrance of his best beloved from these words, laden with the perfume of a grace which no tongue can describe. By my life, he who hath drunk the choice wine of fairness from the hands of my bountiful favor will circle around my commandments that shine above the dayspring of my creation. Think not that we have revealed unto you a mere code of laws. Nay, rather we have unsealed the choice wine with the fingers of might and power. To this beareth witness that which the pen of revelation hath revealed. Meditate upon this, O men of insight. We have enjoined obligatory prayer upon you with 9 rakas to be offered at noon and in the matan and the evening unto God. The revealer of verses, we have the revealer of verses. We have relieved you of a greater number as a command in the book of God. God verily is the ordainer, the omnipotent, the unrestrained. When ye desire to perform these prayers, turn ye towards the court of my most holy presence, this hallowed spot that God hath made the center, round which circle the concourse on high, and which God hath decreed to be the point of adoration for the denizens of the cities of eternity, and the source of command unto all that are in heaven and on earth. And when the soleil of truth and utterance shall set, turn your faces towards the spot that we have ordained for you. Yea, God verily is almighty and omniscient. Everything that is hath come to be through God's irresistible decree. Whenever my laws appear like the sun, in like the soleil in the heaven of mine utterance, they must be faithfully obeyed by all, though my decree be such as to cause the heaven of every religion to be cleft asunder. God doeth what God pleaseth. God chooseth, and none may question God's choice. Whatsoever God the well-beloved ordaineth, the same is verily beloved. To this God, who is the Lord of all creation, beareth me witness. Whoso hath inhaled the sweet fragrance of the All-Merciful, and recognize the source of this utterance, will welcome with his own eyes the shafts of the enemy, that he may establish the truth of the laws of God amongst men. Well is it with him that hath turned thereunto and apprehended the meaning of God's decisive decree. We have set forth the details of obligatory prayer in another tablet. Blessed is he who observeth that whereunto he hath been bidden by God, who ruleth over all mankind. In the prayer for the dead, specific passages have been sent down by God, the revealer of verses. Let one who is able to read recite that which hath been revealed to precede these passages. And as for him who is unable, God hath relieved him of this requirement. He of a truth is the mighty, the pardoner. Hair doth not invalidate your prayer, nor aught from which the spirit hath departed, such as bones and the like. Ye are free to wear the fur of the sable as ye would that of the beaver, the squirrel, and other animals. The prohibition of its utilization hath stemmed not from the Quran, but from the misconceptions of the divines. He verily is the all-glorious, the all-knowing. Ye are free to wear the fur of the sable as ye would that of the beaver, the squirrel, and other animals. The prohibition of its utilization hath stemmed not from the Quran, but from the misconceptions of the celestials. He verily is the all-glorious. God verily is the all-glorious, the all-knowing. We have commanded you to pray and fast from the beginning of maturity. This is ordained by God, your Lord, and the Lord of your forefathers. God hath exempted from this those who are weak from illness or age, as a bounty from God's presence, and God is the forgiving, the generous. God hath granted you leave to prostrate yourselves on any surface that is clean, for we have removed in this regard the limitation that hath been laid down in the book. God indeed hath knowledge of that whereof ye know not. Let him that findeth no water for ablution repeat 5 times the words, in the name of God, the most pure, the most pure. Then proceed to his devotions, such as the command of God, the God of all worlds. In regions where the days and nights grow longer, let times of prayer be gauged by clocks. And other instruments that mark the passage of the hours. God verily is the expounder of the wise. We have absolved you from the requirement of performing the prayer of the signs. On the appearance of fearful and natural events, call ye to mind the might and majesty of your Lord, God, who heareth and seeth all, and say, dominion is God's, the Lord of the seen and the unseen, the God of creation. It hath been ordained that obligatory prayer is to be performed by each of you individually, save in the prayer for the dead. The practice of congregational prayer hath been annulled. God of a truth is the ordainer, the all-wise. God hath exempted women who are in their courses from obligatory prayer and fasting. Let them instead, after performance of their ablutions, give praise unto God, repeating 95 times between the noon of one day and the next, glorified be God, the Lord of splendor and beauty. Thus hath it been decreed in the book, if ye be of them that comprehend. When traveling, if ye should stop and rest in some safe spot, perform ye, like men and women alike, a single prostration in place of each unsaid obligatory prayer, and whilst prostrating, say, glorified be God, the Lord of might and majesty, of grace and bounty. Whoso is unable to do this, let him say, only. Glorified be God, this shall assuredly suffice him. He is of a truth the all-sufficing, the ever-abiding, the forgiving, compassionate God. Upon completing your prostration, seat yourselves cross-legged, men and women alike, and 18 times repeat, Glorified be God, the Lord of the kingdoms of earth and heaven. Thus doth God make plain the ways of truth and guidance, ways that lead to one away, ways that lead one to way, which is this straight path. Render thanks unto God for this most gracious favor. Offer praise unto God for this bounty that hath encompassed the heavens and the earth. Extol God for this mercy that hath pervaded all creation. Say, God hath made my hidden love the key to the treasure. Would that ye might perceive it, but for the key of the treasure would to all eternity have remained concealed. Would that ye might believe it. Say, this is the source of revelation, the dawning place of splendor, whose brightness hath illumined the horizons of the world. Would that ye might understand this is verily that fixed decree through which every irrevocable decree hath been established. O pen of the Most High, say, O people of the world, we have enjoined upon you fasting during a brief period, and at its close have designated for you Nowruz as a feast. Thus hath the day star of utterance shone forth from the horizon of the book, as decreed by God, who is the master of the beginning and the end. Let the days in excess of the months be placed before the month of fasting. We have ordained that these, amidst all nights and days, shall be the manifestations of the letter Ha, and thus they have not been bounded by the limits of the year and its months. It behooveth the people of Baha throughout these days to provide benevolent cheer for themselves, their kindred, and beyond them, the poor and needy, and with joy and exultation to hail and glorify their Lord, to sing God's praise and magnify God's name. And when they end these days of giving that precede the season of restraint, let them enter upon the fast. Thus hath it been ordained by God, who is the master of all mankind. The traveler, the alien, those who are with the child or giving suck are not bound by the fast. They have been exempted by God as a token by God's grace. Yea, God verily is the Almighty, the most generous. These are the ordinances of God that have been set down in the books and tablets by God's most exalted pen. Hold ye fast unto God's statutes and commandments, and be not of those who, following their idle fancies and vain imaginings, have clung to the standards fixed by their own selves, and cast behind their backs the standards laid down by God. Obtain from food and drink from sunrise and sunset, and beware lest desire deprive you of this grace that is appointed in the book. It hath been ordained that every believer in God, the Lord of judgment, shall each day, having washed his hands and then his feet and then his face, seat himself, and turning unto God, repeat Allah Wabha 95 times. Such was the decree of the Maker of the heavens, when with majesty and power he established himself upon the thrones of his name. Perform ye likewise ablutions for the obligatory prayer. This is the command of God, the incomparable, the unrestrained. Ye have been forbidden to commit murder or adultery, or to engage in backbiting or calumny. Shun ye therefore what hath been prohibited in the holy books and tablets. Alhamdulillah, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim, Allahu Akbar. Dao ka dao, fei chong dao, ming ka ming, fei chong ming, ja, Rastafari. Deus nos de ki essentiale santo fakito no mentum, vahegusanam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivan l'sok b'dvar Torah. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei p'riagafen. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sevomas tu save jegate, sabe sata bavantu sukitata. Fagabiem. Aquaba upendo namani. Fakiri neselami, chinda dam per me, libov me umejagam. Umbuto shabana fakitka. Session, como se nira domo argato pela ma yellow waka toko the washing good and go my God, we thank you for the blessings. Ata jamayat fanami, madom, the whole no shadi. All thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim. Blessed love and peace. Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. Mir. Jai Janendra. Satnam. Zaijen. Adios. Jai Chaklis. Sayonara. Metta Samadhi. Eshwaso. Agape ke irini. Esempe na asamojo. Liabov Emir. Gerlich Ofred. One love and peace, happiness, liberation.